Hello, everyone. This is Pastor Ryan Pronzinski of Christ Lutheran Church in Michigan Center, Michigan. And this is my Chair Chats daily devotional for Saturday, May 9. Peace be with you. These video devotionals are intended to help you engage your life of faith during this time of pandemic when your usual faith routines are probably still disrupted. And so with that in mind, I encourage you to take time throughout these videos to pause and reflect, journal, have conversation with those around you if you are living with others. I also highly encourage you to leave constructive comments, questions, or prayer requests in the comments section below this video, and I promise that I will get to those in the following videos. And it also leaves an opportunity for other people to respond to your comments, questions, and prayer requests as well. And so this can be an interactive space where we engage our life of faith together. That is my hope for these videos. The readings that get used each day for these videos comes from the Daily Revised Common Lectionary, which is a church calendar reading schedule, and it can be found online. The readings for the day are Psalm 31, verses 1 through 5, and verses 15 through 16. I will not be reading this today, but if you wish to see the reading of that psalm and the details that follow, please watch the May 7th video. The other readings are Jeremiah 26, verses 20 through 24, and John 8, verses 48 through 59. Before I get to the readings themselves, as always, I would like to invite you to join us at Christ Lutheran Church for our Sunday morning worship services, which we have been live streaming on our Facebook page. The link to our Facebook page is in the description below, along with the readings today. So please come and join us for Sunday morning worship at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or come watch this worship service after the fact. If you can't join us then, we'd love to have you. All right, on to our first reading for today, which is going to come from Jeremiah 26, verses 20 through 24, which reads as follows. There was another man prophesying in the name of the Lord, Uriah, son of Shemaiah, from Kiriath Jearim. He prophesied against the city and against this land in words exactly like those of Jeremiah. And when King Jehoiakim, with all his warriors and all his officials, heard his words, the king sought to put him to death. But when Uriah heard of it, he was afraid and fled and escaped to Egypt. Then King Jehoiakim sent Elnathan, son of Achbor, and men with him to Egypt. And they took Uriah from Egypt and brought him to King Jehoiakim, who struck him down with the sword, and threw his dead body into the burial place of the common people. But the hand of Ahikam, son of Shaphan, was with Jeremiah, so that Jeremiah was not given over into the hands of the people to be put to death. Here ends the reading. So we get another type of theme that occurs in the prophets today in this reading from Jeremiah. And it was actually mentioned, this theme, by Stephen, who gets martyred, kind of as a prophet in Acts chapter 7, which we read yesterday. Right? And this is the theme. Often the people are told the truth of God, or told the truth from God, by a prophet, right? The prophet acts kind of as a mouthpiece, a spokesperson for God. They speak a truth, or the truth, and the people don't like it. And so what do the people do? Well, they simply kill the prophet, right? Just kill the person speaking the thing you don't like. Until somebody will finally pop up and say, I'll tell you whatever you want to hear, as long as you take care of me, right? And that's kind of what we have going on today, right? Because the people don't like what Jeremiah has to say, and another truth speaker pops up in Uriah who says the exact same thing as Jeremiah, God's spokesperson. And what do the people do? They say, well, we don't like it. We don't need more of you popping up, so we're going to kill you. Right? Uriah speaks the truth. The people, including the king, don't like the truth Uriah speaks. So the king, and by extension the people, have Uriah killed. Now Jeremiah, who is also speaking this very same truth, has an advocate, though. That is the difference between Uriah and Jeremiah. He has an advocate, an ally. And so Jeremiah's life is spared. Now, as I say all this, this whole scenario might seem foreign to us, to you today, because you might be thinking to yourself, we would never do something like this. We would never just kill somebody or harm somebody because we don't like what they're saying. But I would challenge that, especially if you live here in Michigan. I would have you look to the people who are bringing assault rifles and swastika symbols to the Capitol building because they don't like the truth that is being spoken to them by our current leaders at the state legislation, at the state Capitol House, including our governor. And all these truths that are being spoken to us are based on data. It's not like they're just making things up, right? But people don't like hearing it. Now, of course, they're not harming anyone yet. Or maybe, well, technically they might be if they're sick and they're all gathering together and getting others. That's a whole other thing. But they're not ensuing any violence yet, but they are, just like the people in the reading today, trying to use force, even if it's force of will and of threat, to get the truth speakers right now to say something else. That's exactly what they're doing with their guns and their shows of force. They're trying to get the leaders to say something else because they do not like what's being said. So we are not that different than the people in Jeremiah's day right now. Our only saving grace right now is that real violence, no one actually used those assault rifles. That's the only difference right now. No one has been killed. And thanks be to God. And God, I pray that God keep it that way. I hope you are as well. And so what we can learn from Jeremiah and the prophets then is that it is good to listen to learn from, and act on the truth. And not shut up the truth and pretend like the truth is wrong simply because we don't like the truth. Because in the prophets, when the people don't listen to the truth and keep doing whatever they want, bad things happen, right? People lose their homes, become slaves, and even die. And two of those realities are quite possible if we don't listen to the truth, right? This health crisis is connected to the economic crises, and not just because we're shut down right now, but if people are getting sick, they can't go to work, right? Even if they had a job to go to, if they're sick, they can't go to work. And so if they can't work, they can't get money, and they might lose their homes, right? And if you're dead, you're going to lose your home too, right? These realities are true for us too. Maybe not quite in the same way. We don't have an opposing power like a Babylon or an Assyria coming in to attack us. But we do have a foreign enemy that's coming and attacking us that could cause us to lose our livelihood and even our lives themselves if we don't listen to the truth and act on it. And of course, the thing that ends up redeeming people, saving people, bringing them back in the prophets is God, right? But it is at the same time that the people are redeemed and saved when they finally confront the truth, right? It's God, but it's God through people confronting the truth. That's what the prophets did. They kind of kept speaking the truth until people finally got it. And then the people finally lived their lives based on God's truth being spoken to them, and not simply their wants, their desires, their fear, their anger. So what can you take away from this reading during this time of pandemic? Well, I would say this. Support your leaders. support your leaders speaking the hard truths and thus making tough decisions based on the truth. And call for other leaders who are trying to squander the truth, spin the truth, deny the truth, cover up the truth, to actually speak the truth. Because right now that's what we need. We need the truth. Otherwise, faithful people end up getting squashed by angry people who don't like hearing the truth. And that's not what we need right now. You know, all the faithful people like Uriah just simply trying to speak the truth. We don't need mobs, harming them and keeping them from speaking the truth. That's not good. And when we don't support our leaders speaking the truth and leading from the truth, they end up, like I just said, they end up like Uriah. And we don't need that right now. So I guess I would have you wonder this. How can you support the leaders, including pastors and leaders of the church like me? How can you support the leaders in your area to lead and make decisions based on the truth, on facts, and on data? Now, frankly, I think this is going to look like supporting the idea of staying home much longer and much more frequently than any of us had anticipated at the very beginning of this, even if we don't like it, because it's going to be the thing that keeps people safe and keeps more people from dying than necessary before we find a vaccine or viable treatment for this disease. So please consider that. It might very well just be something as simple, although hard, as staying home, right? And encouraging and supporting the leaders around you to continue acting in ways that help keep people at home or safely socially distanced from one another, instead of just saying, well, we don't like that truth, we want it our way. Please don't do that. All right, moving on to John chapter 8, verses 48 through 59. The Judeans answered him, that is Jesus, "Are we not right in saying that you are a Samaritan, that is, not a person of the Jewish faith and of Judea, and have a demon?" Right? So are we not right in calling you a Samaritan and that you have a demon? Jesus answered, "I do not have a demon, but I honor my Father, and you dishonor me. Yet I do not seek my own glory. There is one who seeks it, and he is the judge. Very truly I tell you, whoever keeps my word will never see death." The Judeans said to him, "Now we know that you have a demon. Abraham died, and so did the prophets. Yet you say, whoever keeps my word will never taste death. Are you greater than our father Abraham, who died? The prophets also died. Who do you claim to be?" Jesus answered, "If I glorify myself, my glory is nothing. It is my Father who glorifies me, he of whom you say, quote, 'He is our God,' though you do not know him, but I know him. If I would say that I do not know him, I would be a liar just like you. But I do know him, and I keep his word. Your ancestor Abraham rejoiced that he would see my day. He saw it and was glad." Then the Judeans said to Jesus, "You are not yet 50 years old, and you have seen Abraham?" Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you, before Abraham was, I am." So they picked up stones to throw at Jesus, but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. Here ends the reading. So before I get to my notes, I was trying to figure out how to fit them in my notes, but the one thing that for me I think is beautiful about Jesus right now, how he shows really good leadership skills, is that he says, everything I don't do for my own glory, right? Jesus is never trying to toot Jesus' own horn and promote himself right? Everything that Jesus does is to glorify God and lift up the poor and vulnerable amongst him, right? It is to love God and love neighbor. It is never self-promoting, self-aggrandizing, right? And I think that's really beautiful. I think that's something really important to keep in mind as we live our own lives. Like, our lives should not be lived from a place of trying to toot our own horn and put ourselves up on a pedestal or support people who are doing that. That's poor leadership, and that's not a good way to live. That's not who we are called to be as followers of Jesus. But the other thing that I would mention in this video that I do have in my notes is, here in John, we have echoes of the theme that I mentioned above, right? Of this truth being spoken, people not liking it, and then wanting to squash this truth and or the person speaking it, right? When people don't like the truth, they can retaliate and even cause harm and death. They tried to pick up stones and stone Jesus. And so in this part of John, Jesus is claiming to be God. Right? This is what Jesus means throughout John when he says things like, "Very truly I tell you, before Abraham was, I am." This phrase, "I am," comes from the Exodus story where Moses asks God, tell me your name. Moses wants to know God's name. And God responds with, "I am who I am." That's actually how we get what's called the tetragrammaton, the YHWH in Hebrew, which often gets translated or spoken as incorrectly as Jehovah. That's inaccurate. That's grammatically inaccurate. But when people say Jehovah, that's the "I am who I am." A little bit more accurately, but still not completely accurate, is Yahweh, the YHWH, because there are no vowels in Hebrew. And so that's the name that God gives for God's self, the non-name, the pseudo-name, how he responds to Abraham. So when Jesus says, "I am," and other things like, "I am the light," "I am the gate," "I am the good shepherd," etc., Jesus is echoing this pseudo-name of God, calling himself God, right? And this is the truth. It's the truth. Jesus is God in human flesh. But this truth challenges what many of the people of the day believed. That's why they're freaking out, especially since this starts to play with the idea of monotheism. How can God be God and man? And we still wrestle with this. So I think we can kind of empathize a little bit with those who are upset. However, instead of being curious and trying to understand, they retaliate, right? They get afraid, they get scared, and instead of trying to seek out the truth more and understand, they retaliate, they call Jesus a demon, they try and kill him today, and eventually Jesus does in fact get killed. And again, this retaliation comes from a place of fear. Their faith, which is the foundation of their entire lives, right, is being challenged and torn apart, and so they're scared. And from this fear comes anger and hostility. And all of these emotions should sound very familiar to our current situation today. People's lives as they have known it is being upended by a very scary but real truth that is beyond their complete understanding and control, just like in the story today. And so people today, like in the story, they feel confused and angry and scared. And so our lesson for the day, both in Jeremiah and John, is this: that when we as people act from our fears and anger and desire to make things the way we want them, instead of acting from the truth, bad things often happen, including killing Jesus, that is, killing God amongst us, which I can't think of anything worse than that. Nobody wants to kill God, but that's what happened. So in this story, we are called to seek out the truth, even if we don't like it, and act and live from the truth. For the truth, which Jesus embodies, is life-giving. And even if it's hard to understand and do, the truth is still life-giving. In fact, we're going to hear on Sunday tomorrow from John 14, where Jesus himself says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. This is not an exclusive statement. This is a statement intended to let us know that our relationship with Jesus is secure, and that in Jesus, the truth, we always have life. But I just say all that to reiterate the importance of the truth and living from the place of the truth. And of course, I just want to end everything on this note. Like, what is God doing about all this? Because the reality is, many people are going to live from fear and anger instead of truth. That is our human history. That's what the prophets teach us. And that's what our own current history teaches us. And so what is God doing about all of this? The good news is this, that even as we people at times are overcome by our fears and anger and make really poor decisions, right, like crucifying Jesus, and maybe even end up killing Jesus, God in our midst, our God is a God of death and resurrection. Your God is a God of death and resurrection. We are in Easter, right? And God promises to be gracious with us, to be gracious with you, and help lead us and you through the death that does in fact happen, and bring us to a place of new life. That is God's promise to us. And so this is why Jesus is able to say to the disciples in John chapter 20, as they are locked up for fear, peace be with you. Peace be with you. Or in John 14, my peace I give you, my peace I leave you. The peace I give you is not of this world, right? And God in Christ Jesus is able to give us a peace that is beyond this world, because only God in Christ Jesus has defeated death and given life through death. And so it is that peace that God desires to leave with us, even as we squander and kill the truth amongst us. And so I'll end by saying, peace be with you, as you seek to both discover and live from the truth, even if it's difficult. I will talk to you on Monday.